Sanders' education overhaul, the LEARNS plan, made its way through the House of Representatives this week. It will head back to the Senate to concur an amendment. Should land on her desk early in the week for signature, and that means we'll see the focus turn to other matters in the next few weeks. But joining me now to discuss what those major matters may be is Representative Robin Lundstrum, Republican of R-Elm Springs, and Senator Clarke Tucker, Democrat of Little Rock. Thank you both for being here. Let's review the week of LEARNS activity. It's been a brutal week in terms of just, pressure and a lot of intensity, a lot of people talking. Representative Lundstrum, I'm going to start with you. You were on the House end over there. What did you kind of see from some of your colleagues and some of the action down there in terms of people and their strong opinions on this?
Well, we have strong opinions. It was a vigorous debate. It was a good debate. There were a lot of people that came to the Education Committee, and they had I think there were 94 people that spoke, so it was well heard. I think it's probably been the most discussed bill in a long time in Arkansas, but it's finally, we're putting a focus on education, which is wonderful. Increasing teacher pay, which is wonderful. I don't think you can pay teachers a higher compliment than saying you're valued by putting a price tag on it, and $50,000 is a nice base pay to start. So finally the spotlight is being put on education, and allowing parents to have choice is great. So there's buy-in everywhere. I think it's wonderful to finally have the spotlight on education in Arkansas.
You know who doesn't buy in is this guy sitting right next to you. He voted no on it here. So Senator Clarke, let's hear your objections to the bill.
Well, there's a lot of things that I love in the bill, and I said this on the floor. I agree with Representative Lundstrom on the teacher pay and maternity leave, focus on literacy, strengthening pre-K. I love all of that. I'm concerned about the long-term cost to the state and to public education. And I'm not sure that school choice really solves for some of the problems that as a state we face. The primary example that I've given is that school choice does not solve for poverty, and there's plenty of examples to demonstrate why. So we can't just change schools. We have to change some underlying factors in our society, poverty being a prime example.
I do want to talk about the costs here in a second, but just a follow-up question on that. You can't let the perfect be the enemy of good sometimes. You liked a lot of things in the bill. Why could you not get over the hump on some of the things you didn't like?
You're right, but I agree that you can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. I think the cost to our public school system is too high. And also teacher fair dismissal. I want to make sure that teachers have due process and have some protections, not only when they're employed, but also when their contracts come up for renewal. But really it's the cost of our public education system. That was really the deal breaker for me.
Is there anything in the bill that you didn't like?
Well, I'm going to wait until rules and regs. When you flesh out a bill in the rules and regs, that's where a lot of even more of the sausage is made. But I think we disagree on public education. There's been some good things about public education, but I think if we keep doing the same thing we've always done, we're going to keep getting the same results. We have kids that can't read when they graduate high school. We have them reading on the third grade level. We have to make some changes, and change is never fun. The buggy whip folks didn't like Henry Ford. It's time to make some changes, but having teachers be the rock stars, I don't think they need to worry about teacher fair dismissal. If they're a good teacher, they've now been pushed to the forefront, and they are the rock stars of the school. It's not how fancy the school is, it's do you have good teachers, and good teachers will be paid properly. That is a great day in Arkansas, plus it's competition. If you're not a good teacher, you're probably not going to last long, but if you're a good teacher, people are going to be calling you. Yep. That's a wonderful thing.
There was an amendment put on in the House that's going to come back to the Senate that you'll get a chance to vote on that does put some, outline some due process for teachers in there.
Yeah. That's great. I want to just follow up. I do believe that some things need to change. I agree with Representative Lundstrom on that. We do have a lot of school choice in the status quo right now, but and so I don't know that that's necessarily, obviously the private school vouchers is a huge change, but we do already have a lot of school choice. But one thing that for certain needs to change is the way that we measure teachers, schools, and school districts. Right now, by and large, it's based on a single standardized test, which does not take into account the way in which a child shows up at school. So you might have a teacher in one school that has kids with test scores off the charts, but those kids show up well-fed, well-clothed, and ready to learn, and you have children in another school who show up in much different shape. And this goes back to the poverty point that I was making. In that school that's not quite as affluent, you might have the best teacher in the state, but the test scores are not going to be nearly as high. But that's the only way we measure the performance and effectiveness of that teacher, and we have to figure out a better way to measure the performance of a teacher, a school, and a school district to take into account the way in which kids show up to school.
Is that another bill, or is that something that rules and regs could do through this bill?
We're going to have to monitor that, but you can also see when a child starts at point A and goes to point B, you can monitor that and you can check that out all the way. But yes, we're going to have to watch everything. And it's also part of parent involvement. parents are going to have to engage.
An age-old problem, I would say.
An age-old
Yeah,
problem
yeah.
for every
All right,
school.
Last word on this subject.
I will say, just to follow up, I have spoken with Commissioner Oliva on that exact point, and he had some encouraging things to say. I think in principle we agree about that, and he has some other methods of evaluating teachers in schools, so I'm hopeful that in the rules and regs process we'll be able to come up with different ways of how we evaluate schools.
One last thought, it's the taxpayers' money. We're the customer, and I think when the customer engages, which they are now, there'll be a better outcome, and I think there'll be more respect for what the teachers do, and that's critically important.
All right, let's talk money. You're on the Revenue and Tax Committee, so you're definitely clued in as to the inputs of what's going into the state budget right there. Do you think that the numbers are accurate in what we are projecting this first year and second year to cost? And we really didn't get a third year, although there was some questioning on that in the House Education Committee.
It's going to be expensive. We're going to have to watch every single penny. We're going to have to make some cuts in other areas. We have a balanced budget in Arkansas, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But if education's worth it, and we're saying it is, we're going to have to make some cuts in other areas.
What's that year 3 price tag?
I think this is an important point that hasn't got a lot of public discussion. In year 1, there's a cap on the number of students who can participate in the program. It's 1.5% of the total statewide number of kids who were enrolled in school the previous year. In year 2, there's a 3% cap. In year 3, there's no cap at all. What I have been told is that there will be a cap on dollars, not a cap on students.
Right.
And that if enough students enroll, then that becomes a prorated, and you might not get 90% of the foundation formula, but you'll get some lower number. But I haven't been told what the cap on dollars is or who will make that determination. And to me, those are huge questions about what our budget's going to be. Basically, the explanation that I got is, we're going to have another session before year 3, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Except I'm being asked to vote on the bill today.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question, Roby, is we have no idea right now how much it's going to cost, and that's a great concern.
Yeah. Well, revenue stabilization might answer some of those questions, and that process hasn't started, but I think it's near. Let's flip and talk about some things that are going to be coming up. It's inevitable that the LEARNS bill is going to pass when it goes back through the Senate, and the governor's going to sign it next week. Constitutional amendments are something that's going to come up. You both have some activity on that front. Representative Lundstrum, you're the lead on a constitutional amendment that would basically allow lottery scholarships to be used for vocational and technical schools, which do not allow now. Tell us a little bit about that, and Senator Tucker is on that with you.
Yes, he is. I think it's something that a lot of us agree on both sides of the aisle. When the lottery was founded, there was an oversight, and we left out VOTEC. And if we were really serious about VOTEC education, we need to put that back into lottery scholarship, and I think that's something that will give us a huge return on investment. And I'm hoping it will be one of the ones selected. We'll see. Well,
you got like 90 sponsors on it, so I think it's got a pretty good chance of doing
so.
that. You're on that bill too, for the same reasons?
Absolutely. I don't really have much to add beyond what she said. I totally agree. I would love for that to be one of the amendments that we refer out.
All right. You also have an amendment that you're the lead on that Representative Lundstrum is not on this one. It's to basically create jungle primaries in Arkansas. That's what I call them. It's where everybody's on the ballot in the spring primary, and then the top 2 vote getters advance, whether that's Republican, Democrat. Why do you think we need to do that in Arkansas?
Well, I think partisanship is one of the greatest threats to our country right now. And the way that it works right now, primaries determine most elections, not just in Arkansas, but throughout the country. Take the U.S. Congress, for example. There's 435 congressional seats. How many competitive congressional races are there in the country every election cycle?
There were 3, I think.
Right?
So, no, I'm kidding. It was more
it
than
might
that.
be 40 or so in that range, which means there's almost 400 districts that are determined, those races are determined in their primaries. So at that point, your political incentive is to not get outflanked on the extreme rather than work with people on the other side. And this is why we have total gridlock in Washington and they can't get anything done, because they have a political disincentive from working with people on the other side. And the other problem with it is you're not representing your entire district. You're only representing your primary voters. And this is not a partisan thing to me. I'm not saying this is about Republicans. It's about both parties. And so if you have 2 Republicans on a ballot in November or 2 Democrats on a ballot in November, at that point you're answering to every voter in your district and not just your primary voters. And we get back to a point where we have representative democracy. In a sense, you're representing your whole district and not just those who vote in the primary.
You're opposed to that one?
Oh, I'm definitely opposed to it. I like the fact that Clarke puts on the Democrat shirt and he proudly wears it, and I put on the Republican shirt and I represent the Republican Party platform, and you know what you're getting. When you look at that Snickers bar, you can turn it over and see what's in the back of it. When you turn over that Republican Party person, you can look at the platform and you see what they sign up for, and the voter has some information. And I think that's good for the voters to have some transparency. They can see what they're signing up for, and when they go to the polls, they're putting on that shirt and they know what they're getting. So I think that's really important.
I think you're both peanut butter cups is what I think. So, all right.
I'll just say, even in the open primary system, you still sign up with a party.
Yeah.
So you don't lose that transparency.
All right. You've also got a proposed constitutional amendment, Representative Lundstrum, that would take us back to partisan judges, which we used to have in this
Yes.
state probably 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. Why is it time to change that back?
Well, we had that up until the year 2000, and it is difficult. It's difficult for the judicial candidates when they're running for office, and it's difficult on the voter, who is the ultimate customer. And they have to figure out who is this person in the black robe that's deciding my fate. I don't know anything about their worldview. I'm not asking them about issues. I can't do that because they may have to someday vote on those issues, but I can't even figure out what their worldview is. Who is this person? So I can't ask anything, but I'm supposed to somehow blindfold and guess. And that doesn't work. Again, we know more about what's in our Snickers bar than we know about what we're voting for a judge, and I think that's inappropriate. It would be nice to have a little bit of information.
30-second rebuttal.
A person's worldview is not relevant to their job as a judge. I clerked for Leon Holmes, who was nominated by George W. Bush, and every Democratic senator voted against him when he was on the Senate floor. And I worked for him for 2 years, and politics and worldview never came up once, because your job as a judge is to follow the law, not to impose your own personal ideology. So your ideology is not relevant when you're a judge.
All right.
And I would firmly disagree, but that's okay.
All right, we're out of time. I got to end it there. Representative Robin Lundstrum, Senator Clarke Tucker, thank you both so very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're back with more right after this.